Okay, so I wanted to take a minute to talk through how you get to a function from a graph. So we're going to do a couple of examples, and our goal would be to write this as y equals a sine of b x minus c over b, or as y equals a cosine of b x minus c over b. So we need to figure out what A, B, and C are, basically. So let's figure out what the amplitude is. The amplitude, again, is how far away from the x-axis this thing gets. So that's at 1/2. So the amplitude is 1/2. That is the absolute value of A. D period, remember in general, is 2 pi over B. And how do we figure that out here? So we are going to look from peak to peak, or valley to valley, or x-intercept going up to x-intercept going up. You're going to choose one of those things and see what the distance is, how long it takes to repeat itself. So we can do this from valley to valley here. That's going from pi over 2, from 0 to pi over 2. So you can do like 0 minus, or pi over 2 minus 0. End minus beginning, right? Pi over 2 minus 0 would be pi over 2, and that would be your period. Okay, so since the period is 2 pi over b in general, we need to figure out what b is, and we can use this fact. And we're going to do that with, we can cross multiply and solve for b. So we get 4 pi equals pi times b. Divide both sides by pi, you get 4 equals 4. So then you know what the absolute value of A is. You also know what B is, and we need to figure out what C is. So you want to choose what the phase shift is. This would be your starting point, remember. So we have choices here. We could choose to start right here. We could choose to start here. We could choose to start here. Just start here, 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 wherever you want. If starting at 0 is an option, that's a good option to choose. So if we start at 0 right here, our phase shift is 0. That is C over B. Okay. So what function looks like this in one period? That would be negative cosine x, right? Y equals negative cosine x. Would go start at -1, come up, and then go back down, right? So here we are looking at y equals a cosine of b x minus c over b. And we can fill in all of those pieces. Because this starts low at -1/2, so be -1/2 cosine of 4 times x minus 0 over 4. Or just 0 is fine. Okay, so that's one example. If you were to choose, if we chose this guy, this would be pi over 8. We could do that. Let me do that in green, might be smaller here. We chose the phase shift. If I chose it to be this guy right here, that would be pi over 4 divided by 2, which is pi over 8. And that's C over B. So you would then also, one period would look like this, which is what standard sine x looks like. So it would be y equals, amplitude doesn't change, B doesn't change because the period didn't change. So y equals, this would be positive 1/2 sine of b x minus c over b. In this case, you get another, this is minus because it's moving to the right. Okay, let's do one more example. Let's look at this one. The amplitude is 2. The period, again, we want to look for a complete cycle. So you can look peak to peak, x-intercept to x-intercept. Again, if 0 is an option, that's going to be easier to use, right? 2 pi over 3 minus 0 is just 2 pi over 3. you would get the same thing if you did 5 pi over 6 minus pi over 6. That would be 4 pi over 6, which is 2 pi over 3. So we have our period is 2 pi over 3. In general, it's 2 pi over b. So this means that b has to be 3. So we've got the absolute value of a at least is 2, b is 3. We need to know what c over b is. So we want to choose a starting value. We have options, infinitely many of them. So if we choose 0, which is a good place to start if you can, this starts at 0 and goes up. That means it's regular sine, right? So phase shift is c over b, and it's 0. But let's say we didn't see that. Let's say we don't use that. Let's use this as our starting point, pi over 3. Now then that would be, so look at what it's doing here on one full period. That would be negative sine. So we're looking at y equals negative 2 sine of b x minus your phase shift, which is c over b, and that's pi over 3. So that's how you would find the function from a graph. There's a lot of choice here. If you chose this, you'd be looking at cosine. This would be positive sine. This would be negative cosine. This would be negative sine. Right, so you can start on any peak or any valley or any x-intercept and then choose plus or minus sine or cosine depending on what you chose.